Welcome to Find My Voice on the live show, live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and on the podcast. If you are listening on your favorite listening channel, hit that subscribe button as we talk to people who have found their voice to inspire you to find your voice. And this week's topic is being an attention seeker, something that I have been accused of many times by my friends and family for the entire part of my life, getting some attention. But today we're going to talk about attention for you from a business perspective. And the only person that I know who has a company by the name of the Attention Seeker, Stanley Henry, joins us on the show. Welcome, Stanley.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Good. Welcome. Great. Look at that big booming smile. You're everywhere on LinkedIn. I'm going to get to that in a moment, but let's just start. A bit of an easy way to jump in. 3 things about you that the audience doesn't know. All
right. One thing that maybe you don't know is that I'm a massive tech geek. So all the money I earn after paying bills goes all into tech. I've got way too much of it. My partner Claire rolls her eyes every time I look at something else. So there's just way too much money spent on it. More money on tech than in my car or anything. It's just nuts. The other thing is I grew up in Manadera. I grew up South Auckland. And then the third thing is that I played rugby for a little bit in Japan.
Wow. In the pro ranks?
Nah, definitely not.
No. What
I played the season over there with one of the teams that were called Tokyo Gaijin. So it was a bunch of sort of semi-pro players and whatnot. But yeah, no, it was a real cool little tournament. I think it went for 10 weeks or something, 12 weeks. Wow. It wasn't a tournament, it was a full season. But yeah, it was good. It's fast. The guys over there are really quick. I was quite heavy when I started playing there.
Okay.
So I was a little bit slower, but once I could keep up, you could probably bowl them over a little bit easier than they could tackle you.
And I'm figuring you'd be a flanker.
Yeah, sure am.
Yeah, very good, very good. Now a little about rugby. Let's dive into the work stuff or being an attention seeker. You talk about personal branding and reputation being the hallmarks of a person or a person in business. What does having a good personal brand really mean?
Yeah, real good question. So we often try to talk to people about personal brand as another word for reputation. And a lot of people, when you ask them, do you have a great personal brand? They often can't put their hand up. But then when you ask them, is your reputation important to you? Do you have a good reputation? Or does a bad reputation hurt your business or your career? They'll often all answer yes. So once you can then say, well, a reputation is your personal brand. A personal brand is just usually got more focus behind it. You're actually trying to create it. Whereas a reputation, you're often just naturally building it as you go through life. Whereas a personal brand, the way we like to think of it, is you're purposely putting effort behind building it. And so we often hear that personal brand or reputation or referrals is the biggest part of business, and that most of your, business comes from that. And so what we try to say to people is like, why not actively build your reputation and your personal brand?
And how do they do that? Do that?
So, yeah, well, it's a long process, but look, personal brand is no different to reputation. So if you think, and if we put it into that terms, if you think reputation, when you go to say a networking event or you're in a meeting or you're just talking to friends, there are stories that you're telling when you talk to people, right? There are stories that you're telling about your weekend, your work, your life, your partner, your business. Well, those same stories you can tell visually or in written word or on video throughout digital platforms, throughout your website, throughout written word, whatever it is. You can focus your attention on actually taking those stories, recreating them for another audience, and that audience being hopefully your customers is ideally what you're looking for. And you just do that en masse because you are building reputation daily at all times. I'm building reputation now. I build reputation when I go to my BNIs. I build reputation when I meet clients, when I talk to my parents, when I go to a friend's house. I'm building reputation. So you're always building reputation. So why not always build personal brand through, and the best way to do that is through digital platforms in today's world. It's very, very easy. You can sign up for LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all the things. and you can actively build your personal brand. In days gone by, with digital not being as accessible as it is, it was a lot harder. You had to get into newspapers, into magazines, you had to get onto TV, radio, and not everyone could do that because there were gatekeepers there stopping you. So now we're really
also some dollars as well.
Yeah, so it costs you a lot more, right? Whereas now
Absolutely.
It's just time. And so that is how you do it. You need to tell those stories that you usually tell when you're building reputation in person, and just reframe them for a different audience on digital platforms. Now, that's simple when you say it like that, but there's a lot of work that goes into it and strategy. But at the crux of it, find out who you're trying to show, like, who is your audience? Who do you want to share these stories with? Go find them. So where are they? For me, it's on LinkedIn, as I work with businesses. And so find your audience, create that content, find those stories that you're wanting to tell the people, and then show them, and then track whether or not it's getting the results that you want. Are you getting the introductions to people that you want? For most people, likes and comments and views is what they focus on, but it's not necessarily what they need. They need people to talk to in person, to hopefully sell to, or build their network, or whatever the outcome is they're looking for. So yeah, that's that's like really quickly how to do it.
That's the long answer.
Is it? I'll give you the long answer.
That's fine. And look, later on, I've got a couple more questions time. We'll kind of ask you for some sort of tips and things that people can actually apply to. But going back to your story, where did it start for you? Where was I know we've had a conversation off air around attention, the attention seeker, and where that started. But going back to a point when you kind of knew for yourself, I needed to start creating. Can you remember that time?
Yeah, it was 2019, actually, even before I moved back to New Zealand. I had decided to leave Australia, leave my job. I used to be a general manager of hotels. I had already decided I was leaving. I didn't really know what it was I was going to do in business, but I knew that I needed people to sell to, and to sell to people, I needed to have an audience and a reputation further than the hospitality career that I had. I watched a bunch of people and had mentors, like people like Gary Vee and things like that on YouTube, that said produce content that helps develop that personal brand. And so it was probably around, I don't know, March or so in 2019 where I started to realize. I started dabbling at things like YouTube and putting pictures out there on Facebook and whatnot. Then obviously it was starting to dabble with LinkedIn more and more. We used it at work. So I started telling more stories outside of just work stories. And it just built from there. And then when I got to New Zealand and started the business in October 2019, I realized that I had to go just double down on what I'd done. I knew it was working because the day I arrived, the first week I had meetings, coffees and catch-ups with people already lined up that I had met virtually in Melbourne before I moved back to New Zealand. So I knew it was powerful. I knew it could work. And so I just doubled down and it just hasn't stopped doubling down since.
What do you think the biggest hurdle was for you?
For me personally, it was time. For me, I wasn't too worried about sharing stuff. I haven't really been too fazed by that. I know it's a real concern for a lot of people, a lot of our clients, it's a real concern for, but for me, it was time to do it. I don't enjoy doing the work. I like thinking the big picture, the strategy, figuring out what to do and the strategy to go with that, but then actually executing is not where I like to play. And I've always had a team in hotels, I always had a couple hundred staff that, hey, delegate what I needed to get things done. Once it was my business and it was just me to start with, trying to find the help, which was hard to do because you didn't have lots of revenue coming in when you started. Obviously, you just kicked off the business. And so I had to just force myself to do this mundane work that I did not like doing. I knew it was going to work. I knew what to do. I just didn't want to sit down and do it. And so that was my biggest hurdle, just forcing myself to do something I didn't want to do. Not because I didn't like putting out content, just because I didn't like doing the work.
Got it. And so in terms of, obviously, did you look at other people's content strategy and go, I'm going to do things differently? What did you see on LinkedIn and as a time as the opportunity to go and create your type of content style, if you like?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a marketer by trade. I'm definitely an operations leader, is where probably my skills lie in running big teams. And so I know marketing enough, because in hotels you have to, as a general manager, you do definitely generally manage. And so I knew enough about it. So when I came to doing it for myself, I didn't have any sort of biases on what I should do and how I should do it. And I'm pretty stubborn, so I didn't really research a whole lot and take other people's like sort of ideas. I just said, nah, I know how to do this. I'm going to go and do it. And so I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I put out a lot of design and pictures and brand and stuff like that was just terrible. I still do. And it's fine, right? Like, I think for me, it was all about like, do the mistake, get the data, does it work? And I think what that taught me is don't think you know what works. Let the audience tell you what works. And that's a mantra I always tell my clients. And, they'll be picking at stuff that's very subjective. And I'm saying like, well, you don't actually know. That's just something you don't like, but you're not the customer. So let's see what happens, get the data and refine from there. And I think that's a really, really good sort of mantra to live by, because you get too stuck into your own head about what's right, and you tweak stuff, and you can tweak stuff forever. I really didn't know if I was good or bad. So I was just putting it out anyway and hoping for the best. And then, you'd see that, that post didn't do very well. Why didn't do very well? Well, no one likes any posts when I talk about this stuff. So stop doing posts about that.
Yeah. I see obviously a lot of people, I'm on LinkedIn probably just as much as you are, and I see a lot of people for their business just talking about their business or what they do or trying to sell stuff, and we know that doesn't work. What's your take on sharing personal content on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think there is a line on LinkedIn that you probably shouldn't cross. And when I say you shouldn't cross it consistently. That's probably the best way to think about it. Like, there are times where, like if I remember there was a post one of my followers, one of my contacts on LinkedIn posted up about them having a new baby. And you'd probably think that wasn't appropriate. It was on there, but it was on their company page. They never ever post things about that. But their company's values was about family. And so it was appropriate that they do it for that one, because the managing director was out for a month or whatever it was while he cared for his new baby and wife. And so that line normally you wouldn't cross, but I think the thing is, don't cross it consistently. If you start just putting up baby photos every day, that's not what LinkedIn's for. But if it tells a story about your business that you're building and it's relevant, then it's fine. So the types of content that, like personal stuff, I think is important. There's a line, don't cross. But then where I get into personal content for me is about things I enjoy and love. So books and reading is a big part of part of my life. I read lots, and so I share that. Now that might seem as, oh, well, you're sharing educational stuff, that's business, it makes sense, but it really is me. And then often in my copy talks about my experience with what I've learned from that book. And I'll often put up content about me and my partner Claire, or whatever things that are going through life. I just don't do it consistently like it's Facebook, where you're sharing with family, right? I'm sharing with business people who don't need to know all my deepest, darkest secrets. But it is relevant to my business journey, so I do share it. So, but personal content, 100%, all for it.
Good. Yeah, I might have heard that before. Is it pains, problems, philosophy, and proof? Everyone needs to be talking about pains and problems. But I think if you talk about those all the time, it's like they kind of want to see who is the human behind the business, which is your philosophy, and they ultimately, more the logical thinkers in the room, kind of need to have that proof of like, but can you actually deliver? Yeah. Just going back to your the time when you said you were posting design stuff, etc. Can you remember a post that perhaps didn't go so well? And this is probably might be a wee bit challenging, or it was almost a bit like what we did. We did a silly skit thing. It was in October last year, so we'd kind of gone through that, and that was a little bit. I had a lot of people say to me, John Mabry, what was the bloody point of that? I mean, it was funny, and I think it's important to go outside your lane and bring a little humor, especially given what we're experiencing with the COVID year. But what about for you? Is there anything that you've perhaps stuffed up, and you can't do anything about it? You put it out there; it's there forever. And I think it's what a lot of people kind of like. Oh, I don't want to post because it's there forever. It's like, yeah, but can you think of it? Can you think of anything?
There are hundreds of posts that have gone out that are terrible, but nothing that nothing I regret. And the reason behind that is that, yeah, they might be there forever, and people might dig that up in the future. But honestly, people forget real fast. There was nothing controversial that I did. I purposely don't put up things political or anything like that. I stick away from like real polarizing sort of topics, and it's just a personal choice. It's not really. It's personal choice, but it's also me in general. Like I'm a everything's gray sort of person. I don't really choose sides often, and that might seem a little weak, but I kind of think that there's always an argument for both sides. So I don't often put really one-sided arguments. So there's nothing people can dig up to say, hey, this is the way he thinks. But I think from me, when you're putting all the stuff out that just didn't hit or no one really cared for, I think that's probably what happens more often. There's a lot of indifference to your posts where people are just like, like, cool, I'm not even going to look at it. I'm just going to keep scrolling past. It doesn't get you. So I don't think there's anything that I'm like regret. There's definitely nothing out here, but there's definitely hundreds that are terrible. And I definitely shouldn't have. They were a waste of effort putting them out. But you learn about it, take learnings from it, figure it out. Why didn't it work? What did you do wrong? And just try not do as many in the future. But you are going to. And I still do, and you just got to just roll with it. It's part of the learning.
I was going to want to ask that question around the data or the analytics. What are you looking for in a post? And is it every time of the day? What are the things you're looking at and categorizing a post to determine whether or not it's effective or not?
There's two things that I track. I track that the first one is just your traditional engagement, which is views and comments and likes. I really focus on views first because my organic posts are brand awareness pieces. So it's reach that I'm really going for in those. That is the target. We run LinkedIn ads and other methods for lead generation. So it is the first and foremost thing that we go for is reach. Likes and comments, cool, but they're sort of go part and parcel with views. If you're getting more likes and comments, it's going to be shown to more people. So views is a good number to look at. So that's my first and foremost thing. That's not always the right thing for everyone. And for a lot of my clients, it's not the right thing to look at because it's not what they're going for. But for us, that is organic content. But then the second thing is you can correlate that to connection requests, messages in LinkedIn, emails, website visits, stuff like that, where they are people who have taken an action from the post that you're putting up, and you can see it. You can see the spikes when you put up a post or something that you've been doing, and then you'll get a spike in website visits, or you'll get 6 connection requests from random people or whatever. And so we track that to see, extra activity happening, things over and above the post, and when you put them on top of each other and you can track them along, you can say, okay, so that post, they got 4,000 views. We also had a spike in website visits, we had an extra spike in things. So it got me what I'm ultimately looking for, which is leads.
Got it. If someone has perhaps, I would say, had a PR disaster, or something has gone wrong in the past, can you rebuild your personal brand?
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't had to do that. I mean, that's a tough gig, but yeah, absolutely. And I think the further you fall from, maybe the harder it is to build it back, because it's harder to hide press when there's so much of it. But the way digital platforms work is recency is a big thing. So recency is so important, and if you got some bad press, let's say you're in the paper for something you did dumb or whatever, and if you start producing a ton of content and rebrand your image and try to come out, own your mistake or whatever it is you need to do to appease what you did in the past, you're going to bury the bad stuff. And there is an element there, is probably some caution there, is that you shouldn't, like, if you're just a con artist, then probably don't do it. But if you actively have overcome something you did dumb in the past, and you're trying to build back a brand because you made mistakes, and look, redemption stories are very powerful. There's plenty of examples, even of really good people who have done. I mean, a really famous one is Robert Downey Jr., right? Like, he had a pretty big fall from grace, and look at him now. Like, he's huge now after successfully delivering Iron Man for 10 years. So it can be done, but you do have to put in the work, and you do have to come back strong and own it. You have to own your mistake.
Got it. Some tips, Mr. Stanley Henry, for someone wanting to create you've already given a lot already, and you could dive back into some of those. If someone wanted to start creating, where would you tell them to start?
Maybe not quite an intuitive answer, but my first answer is always audience. Make sure you start with audience, and a lot of people don't. And I didn't to start with. Audience is where you need to be looking at before anything else. If you're going out, spend all this time, money, effort making content, and you're showing it to your mum and dad, there's no point, right? Like, there's no point if you're not showing it to the audience to get the outcome that you want. So audience is always where you start. Where are your audience? A really good story, I was talking to a person who sells billboard space, right? And they were talking about how a Rolex ad in a neighborhood of people whose median income couldn't afford a Rolex, even if 1 million people went past it, is not as effective as an audience of a neighborhood of 100 people going past it, of people all earning $10 million a year or something, right? Like,
sure,
you just need 100 compared to 1 million. You're going to get way more buyers of the 100 if the audience is right for the product. And so the same thing applies. Like, is your audience listening? Are they there? Are they on that platform? Are they connected with you? Are they going to see it? And then once you've done that, so that's the first bit. The second thing of creating content is all about doing it en masse and never trying to do it ad hoc. If you're time poor, or you're not sure how to do it, or whatever, doing stuff in bulk is the easiest way to go about producing content. If you try to do it daily, you're going to forget. Life gets in the way. You won't do it. You'll be inconsistent. The worst thing about content is inconsistency. It needs to be consistent to get your message there. Why you said at the start, this guy's everywhere. Everyone who is everywhere is consistent. And so to do that, map out some stuff, do some strategies, do some brainstorming around pillars, content pillars. So content pillars essentially are a theme for your content. Some of mine are leadership, books, my team, my business journey, marketing, business tips. So those are some of my pillars. And then I can create 20 or just brainstorm 30 ideas of each pillar, and then write a story about each one. What is the story you need to do? So if it was, how to find your audience, if that was one of my tips for business tips, I would write a quick blurb about what I just said about making sure you start with audience, and then either find an appropriate picture or don't use a picture, just use text, whatever it is that you need. If you need photos, go out, hire a photographer, go get 4 hours worth of photos, get a shot list. So doing it all en masse, like that's the number one tip for producing content. Just plan it out, map it all out, get your pillars, think of all your ideas, think of your photo shoot before you go so you know all the shots you need to align with the photos. If you're making videos, do things like this. This is the perfect way to do video. Interview other people, get them to talk all day and then make content out of it. It's great. It's absolutely brilliant. Or even better, my approach is get people like John to ask you onto their show to do content, and then they make it for you. And that's even better.
Voila.
There we go. And things like that, but en masse. Like, you get a half an hour, 45-minute video, cut it up. You can find some people offshore if you need to, if budgets are tight, to cut up things for you, whatever it is. But the underlying theme of all of that is do it en masse. Sit down, give it the attention it deserves. Sit for 8 hours, 4 hours, get a whiteboard if you need, however you best visually see stuff, and brainstorm, map it out. Get some friends over, get people in your team, get some other business people that to sit there and have some time with you, because two heads are better than one. So get people around you, brainstorm all the ideas, map out how you create that. Is it a photo shoot? Is it video? do you need a copywriter? Do you just need to write a bunch of articles, whatever it is, and then do it all in at one time? And then once you created everything, get a scheduling tool. Like you can get a free account in Hootsuite for one user. Get that, schedule all your posts, set and forget. Do it all in one day, 3 months. Yeah.
Lots of great tips there. And look, you're one of my favorites is obviously consistency. Up until when I kind of started, it was I put 2 videos on LinkedIn each week. I get leads, and it's peaks and troughs. I think the mass produce and obviously from my video perspective, I record 10 videos in an hour, and there's 10. It's all done. And I just have to go away and edit them, and then they just pop them in every week. Stanley, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and look forward to seeing you around the traps. Of course, if people want to get in touch with Stanley Henry, the attention seeker, how do they do that?
Best place is LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn, search my name, you'll find me.